What radio? The music you want.
With your host, Keys Dan.
This town needs an enema.
RadioWhat.com.
What's up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live in a living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Famous. It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote. And maybe you can have me. Yeah, me, Keys Dan, at your next event, DJLittleRock.com. Today on the program, Chris Cox from the Multiple Podcast Disorder podcast. I'm looking forward to hearing more about him. He seems like a pretty cool guy, and you get to hear him in your ears in the next few minutes. This week's shows, it's Saturday as I record this, the last Saturday of the year 2019, and we're heading into 2020. So the next public show that I have, it's New Year's Eve. I'll be at the Loft in downtown Conway, Arkansas. It's a rooftop party, baby. That's how I'm spending in the new year, at the Loft downtown. I think it's called the Downtown Loft, and that's on the third floor of the building, just above Senor Tequila's, downtown Conway, Arkansas. So we'll be partying on the rooftop. Now, part of the Downtown Loft is covered. It's brand new. Well, I say it's a brand new event center. It's a place to hold events, but the room's been there. I think before it was called maybe Michael's Loft or something like that, or the rooftop party place. But I know I've done weddings, a lot of weddings up there, a good portion, a good couple of handfuls of weddings up on the rooftop. But a new lady, Belinda Boyd, she has taken it over, and she's calling it the Downtown Loft. She just got it in October, and I think she's had a wedding or two there and a couple of birthday parties. But this is the first big show that she's having at the Downtown Loft in Conway, Arkansas. And I hope it becomes the start of a beautiful relationship, because I do like that room so much. And I say it's a room that there's an interior part of it that holds, I think you could probably hold a good, maybe 100 people up there comfortably. And then it spills out onto the rooftop that overlooks the Oak Street, which is the main drag through Conway downtown. So you could, as New Year's 2020 comes up, you'll be able to overlook the city, and hopefully you'll be with your honey and get some smoochies right there at the Loft, the Downtown Loft, just above Senor Tequila's in Conway, Arkansas. I'm just, hey, if you can't hear it, I'm excited. I'm very excited about being there on New Year's Eve, celebrating the birth of 2020, and 2020 could be a great year. Yeah, I know there's going to be a lot of puns. Hindsight is 2020, and 2020 is the year of clarity. Kind of excited about that. Right there at the Downtown Loft, Conway, Arkansas. So if you're within earshot, within driving distance, hey, take a helicopter if you can. Come on out and spend some time. Spend your New Year's Eve with me at the Downtown Loft, Conway, Arkansas. And then on Friday, got the usual Friday night gig, over at the Rab in Conway, Arkansas. Last night was so good, the last Friday of the year, and I expect next Friday, the first Friday of the year, to be nothing but great. I had such a good time. So many people at the Rab last night. Oh my goodness. And my theme, usually I put out a theme, but I really didn't have a theme. I just picked out like the greatest party music of all time and just kind of popped it in there. We're just random. We had some rock and pop and R&B and hip hop, and just threw it all in there. Some stuff with some really good bass. So that got the people moving, the booties moving. And, we do karaoke, too, so people were singing. And we had some good singers, too, I think it was over 20 in rotation, which, for when you're hanging out waiting to sing and that's all you want to do there, maybe, grab a couple drinky poos and maybe have some of that pizza over there. but and you're waiting to sing, and there's 20 singers. Sometimes you can get a little impatient, But be patient. I got the thing going, man. I keep it running, and every once in a while throw in a dance song, so that way the people that are there to shake their booties can do that too. So yeah, it's always a good time at the Rab on Friday nights. Excited about the new year coming, and excited about talking to Chris Cox from the Multiple Podcast Disorder. So let's give a call to Chris Cox. Calling Chris Cox now.
Hello?
Hi, Chris Cox, please.
Speaking. How you doing?
Multiple Podcast Disorder, man.
Yes, I am.
It's Keys Dan with the What Makes You Famous podcast. How's your day?
Oh, man, my day's going fine, Dan. I just woke up, made some breakfast for the family, and sitting here talking to you on air.
Well, it's a few days after Christmas. The big holiday season is nearly over. 2020's coming up, approaching. How was your Christmas, if you celebrate that kind of thing?
Oh, yeah, Christmas was great. I mean, again, it's always good. Kids were happy with their gifts. We got to hang out with family, make some food, stay up pretty much all night, because my wife's family and I now, our family, we kind of celebrate Christmas Eve. So what we do is kind of hang out together as a family, make some food, and then about midnight or a little bit before midnight, we'll all say a family prayer, what we're thankful for, and then about 12:01, we start ripping into those gifts. So kids stayed up till about 3 in the morning, and then went to bed about 3:30, and they were back at it about 7, ready to open up the rest of their gifts. So it was a fun long night, but it was a good Christmas.
Man, Chris Cox, family time is good. I'll tell you that for no unapparent reason. This is a wonderful time, a wonderful thing. I always feel that family is very important. They're the ones that are probably going to back you up the rest of your life, man. They're the ones that you were born into and should stick with you forever and ever.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're tight with your family. Nebraska life, is that Midwest? I guess that's still Midwest kind of.
Yeah, it's the Midwest, and I'm actually a transplant. And neither of my wife. Like, I wasn't born in Wisconsin. I was born in Nebraska, and neither was my wife. So I was born in New York City. So I'm originally from New York. Yeah, I grew up in New York City. Raised in first Harlem, and then the Bronx, and then I moved to Brooklyn when I was like 16, and I was a steady New York resident until about 19 years old, and then I went to Sioux City, Iowa, which is a very small town.
How?
Where football.
All right.
I went to Morningside College. Go Mustangs! We are now back-to-back NAIA national championships in football. 29-game undefeated win streak. So, we went there, played football, had a blast, really kind of fell in love with the Midwest, even though for the first couple of weeks I couldn't sleep because I had never really heard crickets. So I couldn't sleep. I had to turn the TV on the radio on. And this is back in the day. This is like 2001. So it was all CDs, DVDs, and some VHS. There was no streaming services back then. And
tell me more, Grandpa.
I know I'm old, man. I remember when going and buying tapes for music, like when a new artist dropped an album, you brought her on tape. But anyway,
wait a minute, Chris Cox. You just got older when you said I remember when.
I know I'm old because
you're not.
I tell you what, I know. I'm 38, so
we're not too old for this. We're not too old for this.
I know we're not too old for this, but I tell you what, I know how I'm feeling old, and I don't like the music that's out now. I've caught myself saying, man, this ain't music. This ain't music. This ain't music like when I was growing up. And I remember my dad saying the same thing. What you listening to? You can't understand what they saying. Oh, I'm like, damn, I'm old. It's happening.
It is happening.
But yeah.
All right,
So
continue with the story about Nebraska, and we'll talk about we'll talk about music and what's going on these days with these kids.
So I lived in Nebraska. I played football, went to college, finished school. And right when I was finishing school, I met the woman who's going to become my wife. And she was still going to school in Kearney, Nebraska. It's like 5 hours away from where Sioux City, Nebraska is. And Sioux City, Iowa is. And we kind of met and stayed in touch and stayed in contact. And all the way through, when I finished school, left Sioux City, went to Baltimore for about a year and a half to stay with my dad, help my dad for a little bit. And then we, as kids do, we decided we love each other. And so I moved to Kearney, Nebraska, and we created a life together, got married, and then we were like, you know what? We're tired of Nebraska. Let's go to Wisconsin. And we moved to Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and we worked in Milwaukee and lived in. It was beautiful out there, very beautiful. Wisconsin. If nobody's ever visited Wisconsin, please do so. It's a very beautiful state. It really is. Like the Wisconsin Travel Bureau should be paying me for this.
That's what I was going to say. This portion of the podcast brought to you by the Wisconsin Travel Bureau.
For real. I mean, speak it into existence. I can get some money. But then as we, started developing a family and our kids were, getting a little old, not a lot, like I think they were at the time 4 and 2, and we wanted to be closer to family. So we moved back to Nebraska so we'd be closer to my in-laws. And we've been here for about four going on 5 years now, back in Nebraska. So that's the quick version of how I got from New York City all the way to Iowa, then to Nebraska, and then to Wisconsin, and then back to Nebraska.
So, Chris Cox, to me, you and Lady Gaga are the only two famous people that I know out of Nebraska. So, yeah.
There's a few others. Gabrielle Union, she's from Omaha.
All right.
So there's a few others.
You're schooling me, Chris Cox. New York transplant. Here I am from Miami, big city, in Conway, Arkansas, small city. So I'm with you on the culture shock and what are those up in the sky? Oh, those are stars. Okay.
Yeah,
I can see those now.
I know. Wait, you mean the stores don't stay open 24 hours? Or, so you mean the only place I can go 24 hours is Walmart?
Oh,
what?
Yeah. Okay.
So wait, I gotta buy my clothes, food, and change my oil in the same store?
And the fact that you can do that in one store.
Yes.
I think Walmart might be the last bastion of freedom, man. Everything else is closing down. All the stores.
That's because
online shopping.
Online is, and even Walmart to some extent, like they're doing the online. I know we're getting off topic, but that's kind of what I do at multiple podcast disorder. I talk about everything.
Yeah, there are no topics that are taboo, man. Whatever you feel, whatever you veer off into. Yeah. Primarily, this is a story of you and your life and how you came to be Chris Cox, the multiple podcast disorder podcast host. And I've listened to a little bit of your podcast, and you are pop culture, man. You do go throughout things, and whatever's on your mind, you speak it. You speak it to the people.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough. I'll say this real quick and jump back on.
Yeah.
I can't stress enough how I don't like boxes. Like I don't like being put in a box. And people said, "Oh man, you should do a sports podcast, man." I'm like, but I don't want to just be that guy that just knows sports, because I like other things other than sports. Like I love football, I love baseball, but everybody's talking about football and baseball. Everybody's talking about some aspect of sports. And I'm like, well, I just talk about everything. So I'm going to tell you what's on my mind. So I guess that's kind of what started my podcast. My wife, who was getting tired of me talking to her about these things, she was like, you need to talk to somebody else Because, like, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, what? Anime? What? What? Level up? Power? I'm done. I don't know what you're talking about.
You're keeping your marriage together, Chris Cox, by starting a podcast and talking to people, sometimes strangers, like I am. You're my newest Facebook friend. Hey.
I know. That's how you got to reach out, man. Like the meme says, nobody will support you like a stranger you met on Facebook. Nobody will support your art, man.
Chris Cox, I'm looking at the tent poles of Multiple Podcast Disorder, and yes, it is sports, anime, movies, pop culture. Those are the 4 tent poles, at least, that you have listed up top there. But we're finding out how Chris Cox came to be Chris Cox, and you're from New York City until you're 19.
New York City.
Growing up in New York City.
I was 19.
How is the family life? How is the school life? What does a young Chris Cox do in what part of New York?
All over. I lived in 3 out of the 5 boroughs. So I grew up in Harlem. I grew up in Harlem until I was about 7. And then I moved to the Bronx. And the Bronx is where I spent most of my time, like from 7 to the age of like 16. So a good, 9 years I spent living in the Bronx. And young Chris Cox spent a lot of time trying to avoid fights because it is very much navigating your way through. It's very much understanding, okay, where can you go, where can't you go, and why can't you go? And I know that sounds, I don't want to say morbid, but that it really is, especially a young kid, especially in mid-'80s in New York City, so mid-'80s, early 90s, trying to grow up and navigate through that. I mean, it really is. If you don't know how to protect yourself in some way, that is not always physically, but how fast is your mind? How sharp is your tongue? So if somebody tried to say something to you, how fast is your comeback? How good is your comeback? Like, you always had to be on your toes, and you couldn't really take a lot of crap from people, because if they felt that you were a target, that you can just continue to get joked on or laughed at or picked on, then it was just going to be an avalanche. Everyone was going to pile on because no one wants to be the weakest person. And so you try to find ways to navigate through that. And I was really good with cracking jokes on people. I was really good at defending myself using my wit and using my tongue, because I didn't want to get into physical, because I was like, I don't want to fight anybody. That's not what I wanted to do. But then at a certain point, you not wanting to get into a fight doesn't matter. Somebody's going to want to get into a fight with you. And then you learn how to defend yourself. And I did. I learned how to defend myself pretty good, and physically and verbally and mentally. And I tell people this all the time. I was like, I'm a nerd. I'm just a nerd that can fight.
I mean, you're generally you look like a bigger person, and you played football. Well, how did you learn how to fight? Did you learn formally in a studio of some kind, or is this a? No,
I learned by the school of hard knocks. I learned by taking a punch and learning I don't want to get hit in the face anymore. I learned about.
I hope your hand feels okay from me hitting it with my face.
Yeah. It was kind of like that. Like, you know what? I don't know if I want to get hit like this anymore. So I better learn how, like, not to cry because I got hit. And I better learn how to throw some punches back. And that's pretty much how you learn. And, I mean, you don't have to be the greatest. I'm not going to sit here and say, man, my street record is 35-0, because it's not. I have lost a fair share, and I have won a fair share. And usually what happens is, once people know that you're going to fight back, then a lot of that stuff dies down, because nobody wants to fight somebody that really wants to fight back. And then so a lot of it dies down. So by the time I got to my last year of middle school, a lot of that stuff died down, because people knew, like, oh, Chris gonna fight you back. And he may not win, but he gonna throw you out of a window, which that consequently, I tried to do that in high school, in the middle school.
Yikes.
I throw a kid out the window. I was like, you know what? You got to raise your level of violence so someone doesn't pick on you.
But you ran the gauntlet of your young life. You made it through elementary school. I remember elementary school. If you did walk by a bigger kid, generally they would try to bully you. They're trying to find their boundaries and you know, picking on the weaker, the younger, the smaller is a trope. And I'm gonna say no bullying. Come on, man, stop bullying. Help each other out.
I mean, no, I wish I'm down with the no bullying, but at the same point, you got to stand up for yourself.
Right.
Like, I didn't have a bunch of adults that jumped in and was like, "Oh, well, stop this." You know, I had a lot of adults that said, "Well, you need to figure it out. Either you're going to keep letting them pick on you, or you're going to do something about it." And a lot of times, and I had it reversed because I was bigger, but I was like jokey and playful. And so people like picked on me because of that. Like, "Oh man, you big. I want to fight you. Like, I want to test myself against you because you're a bigger kid, but you're not trying to bully nobody. You just like cracking jokes and hanging out and talking with people. So then I think you're soft." And so I got the reverse of it. So like people would just try to like literally just try to start stuff with me because I was a bigger kid. And then, like I said, once I started fighting back and that stuff stopped, I made it through middle school, and then I went to high school. I was like, well, I couldn't wait to get to high school because I wanted to play football. And I didn't get, like a lot of kids, they play like Pee-wee football and stuff like that. I didn't play it. I just played football outside with my friends in the street, in the neighborhood. Because like my parents didn't have money to like buy equipment, and put me in Pee-wee and do all that stuff. So I never got to play. So I didn't play. I didn't start playing actual organized football until I got to high school. And then when I got to high school, like I let all the aggression out. I was like, oh my God, like I can beat on people out here and not get in trouble. Ooh, yeah, we about to have some fun. So I got to like let all that stuff out and then let like a lot of stuff that was going on at home. And it was like a release for me to play sports in high school. Like I played football. I don't say I played basketball. I dabbled in basketball.
You dribbled.
I didn't even dribble. I just got put in because if a kid was making too many layups, Coxie go in, stop those layups. So once that kid didn't want to drive in no more, all right, you're out. You get back onto the edge of the bench. Like, so I dabbled in basketball like freshman year. I dabbled in baseball, which I went to like a couple of practices, but it just didn't suit me. I did wrestling, but football is a sport that like I love football. So anything that football asked me to do, I did it. So like work out, run, try to eat better, watch more films, study it, whatever it needed to be, I did it. And like I truly still do love football. I actually just stopped. I stopped playing organized, full contact, full padded football. I stopped 5 years ago. So right before we moved back to Nebraska, I was playing on a semi-pro team in Wisconsin.
See, this is something I just heard about, Chris Cox, is that there's adult teams that they're not necessarily NFL. If guys want to get together and play football, there's organized teams. You could tell me a little bit about that, because I heard about that from a lady who's running one of those in Northwest Arkansas, and I thought that was pretty cool. You know, get together and play. I think that's something that's lacking in your adult life, man. You got to go out and play.
Yeah, it gives a lot of guys that maybe they played in college football and they didn't play after that. It gives them still something to say, hey, I'm still in my athletic peak and I want to go be athletic and I want to go do something, because playing football, it does give you a sense of self-purpose, because then you're like, well, if I'm playing football, I got to go to the gym. If I got to go to the gym, I got to eat right. If I got to eat right, I got to focus on that work so I can make enough money to pay for all the stuff I have to pay for since I'm playing semi-pro. And it kind of gives you that purpose, that drive to get you going. But yeah, there's a ton of leagues like Wisconsin. There's like the WSFL, which is the Wisconsin State Football League. There's the MSFL, which is the Mid-States Football League. There was the GFL for a while. There's a Minnesota league. There's a Pioneer League. There's a lot of different leagues that represent the different areas or different breakdowns of Wisconsin. So like you have a Northern Lights Football League, which was your northern states, not northern states, but your far north in Wisconsin, which is all the way up to Michigan. You play some teams in Menominee, Michigan. You can play teams in, like I said, Minnesota. You play teams in Milwaukee. You can always go down and play teams in Illinois. So it was pretty cool. I played in the WSFL first for like my first 6 years. We were the Sheboygan County Rebels, and we played in the WSFL. We went to the championship 4 years out of my 6, and we won 1. So we were like the Buffalo Bills of semi-pro football. And I think if our combined, and you can tell it still haunts me, like our combined loss pointage was like 6 points.
Oh.
Like the combined losses of all the championships, like 6 points. It was definitely frustrating for the ones we lost, but I'll tell you what, it was awesome for the one that the time that we came away with the victory, because we had to beat our rivals which was the M&M. They were called the Timberjacks, which is the Menominee, Michigan Timberjacks, and we had to beat them for the championship, and it was like the sweetest victory ever. Like,
you live
awesome
for that one.
It was great. It was a great moment to win that. And then, so, I mean, we joined the MSFL, which is the Mid-States Football League, which was a lot higher competition. I mean, ours was probably like, we had look at it this way, we were like the Big Ten a couple years ago. The WSFL and the Mid-States Football League was kind of like the SEC. So still very high quality competition, but it's just that much faster playing in the MSFL. So we played there.
Yeah, you say you're 38, and is that too old to be playing football? I mean, because it starts to get hard on your body. I think the last time I played a pickup game of football we took turns being quarterback, and my arm was sore, and I was only in my 20s, late 20s. So
it does take a toll. That's why I had to retire. It's funny to say you retire, but I did. Like I told my team, I was like, guys, this is it. Like after this season, I'm done. Because before we play games on Saturdays, and so I play a game on Saturday. Sunday I was still recovering. Monday I was kind of Tuesday I was ready to go, but towards my like 7th year in the league, I wasn't ready to go until like Friday night.
Yikes!
It would take all week. I'm a lineman, so it would take all week for like my body to recover, or my fingers to recover, and just to get prepared to be able to play another game. And that's even with working out during the season to keep your strength up, trying to eat right during the season. But it's just once you hit like 33, 34, you're like, oh, this is a lot. Like, I'm getting beat up. I'm getting bruised up. And you realize you're not as fast as you were before. And the one thing I was strong. And so I always had that, and I had technique. But you realize you're not as fast anymore. So certain things you could do, you can't really pull off the way you used to. And you're relying a lot on kind of just experience and moves. Say like, oh, well, I've seen this before, so that means this is coming, and then you can, beat it. But just by your pure athleticism, you do know, if you're honest with yourself, you do know that some of it's diminishing. But I've seen guys play out there well into their 40s. Like I've seen a couple guys play 42, 43 years old, coming in. They may not be like a full-time starter playing all 4 quarters of the game, but I know we played against guys 44 years old. He'd come out, I think it's for the Timberjack, come out, play tight end, play a couple snaps at tight end, couple snaps on defense, and, he was in and out, but he was still out there playing. And so, that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, so you notice your recovery time diminishing, and you get out of that game. It's okay. Well, let's go back to the beginning where you found the foosball and the love for the game, and that was in New York. And did that help to give you a team, give you a group of friends that you would feel? I mean, because safety in numbers, and you say that there was trouble in the beginning when you were in elementary school, and as you got older and bigger and stronger and taught yourself how to defend yourself, and you had the gift of gab, the funny stuff. That's how you get out of fights a lot of times. You can either tell jokes or you can just act crazy. And I think one of Eddie Murphy's first stand-ups was he acted crazy, and then the one guy that called his bluff and said, "Come on."
Yeah.
Anyway,
that was from Delirious. Not that Delirious. That was from Raw.
Raw, yeah.
Yeah, that was from Raw. But
come on.
I think he's like, and he hit him and his lip just said, "Yeah, I can go to that because I can recite Raw like, yeah."
Oh, you better believe it. Had that record, overplayed it.
Oh, I loved it. Like I said, I had it on VHS tape. Just to rewind it until it got all fuzzy in the middle, like it gets to a certain point and get fuzzy. No, it didn't give me safety in numbers because like I said, once I got to like high school and a lot of that stuff was gone. Like I wasn't out there really searching for fight. I mean, you go into certain places and I was being a kid and, kid of the world type stuff, but I wasn't looking for hanging around people too much that was into that lifestyle. So I didn't really have to worry about strength and numbers or anything like that.
So what did football give you? Yeah.
But what it did give me was like, it gave me the huddle. And I'll explain like this. I'll kind of use a movie quote. If you ever seen Any Given Sunday, and Al Pacino's talking about the things that people miss the most from football, and he was talking about a previous quarterback he coached, and he said the previous quarterback said the most he ever missed, the thing that he most missed from football was being in the huddle and looking back at the 10 other guys and knowing that you're all trying to go in the same direction. Even if you're from different backgrounds, different ages, whatever it might be, at that time when you're in a team, you're all trying to go the same direction for the same goal. And that was the biggest thing that has always stayed with me in football and that I missed that when you're in that huddle, you're all trying to do the same thing and you are all brothers. Because once you play football, you're in a fraternity of football. Like you're always a football player. Like you're never not going to be a football player. You're always a football player. It just matters what level you got to, but you're always a football player. And I think once I joined that fraternity and once I kind of saw that or felt that love, that is what has always driven me in terms of my relationships with people is, once you're with me, you're on my team type of thing. And once you're on my team, I'll go through a brick wall for you. And I think that's what football has ultimately taught me or given me or shown me, and which is why I love the sport or I love the game.
Of course, I've seen Any Given Sunday. It's a Miami movie. Come on.
I always preface it because I do that a lot. I say, "So you've seen that movie, right?" And start talking, and they're like, "No, I haven't seen that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Sorry for assuming. No, I assumed that you would have saw that movie."
But what you took away from it was a life lesson, man, and not just a movie, but football, man. Be a part of a team, and if you find a friend. Or a person, even a business partner that has your back, you got them too. You'll do anything for anyone that hasn't, that has your back, and you will have theirs. You did football throughout your high school life. Any other areas of interest that you had in high school? I noticed that we haven't gone over the other 10 polls too much. You touched upon the anime, and I guess we just talked about the movies. But what else did you do?
I'm sorry.
In high school and such, yeah.
Yeah, in high school. I loved anime and movies. Like, that was my other escape, is like fantasy world, I guess you would say. The cinema was, I used to go to the movie theaters. If I had $7, I was going to go to the movies because that's back then you would see a matinee for like $3.50.
Tell me more, Grandpa.
Yeah, you could see a You can see a matinee for $3.50. So as long as I had enough to hop on a bus to go to the movie theaters and get on the bus back and then go buy the tickets, like I didn't really buy food or drinks. I'm just like, I just want to go see the movie. And so I would tons of movies I would see. And then anime was kind of like my secret hideaway because it wasn't as popular as it is now. And like I've talked about that on my show before, like now it's popular. Now everybody is an anime fan. Everybody watches or has watched Toonami or whatever it is, or Dragon Ball Z. Like everybody's a fan. But when I was growing up, like that was like weird. I was being a cornball. Like, what? That's not even in English, like, so it was something that I actually hid from a lot of people. Like until recently, my own cousin, like my favorite cousin, who I'll like shamelessly plug his show too. There's a podcast from Where I Sit podcast. It's on Anchor as well. He didn't even know I watched anime, and I didn't know he watched anime. So we grew up together, but we grew up together in New York, and those are things you kind of hid from other people. So even in my own family, my own cousin was like closest to me like a brother. He never let me know that he liked anime, and I never let him know that I liked anime because it wasn't such a widely popular thing. And I remember if I wanted to go buy like different anime movies, like I used to just trek down to Chinatown or go downtown to like 34th Street, and they had I think it was like Suncoast Video, and they had tons of like VHS and DVDs back then, like a lot of stuff that was way off the radar. And so that's where I go get my anime and go get my different movies or, one-shot OVAs or go get my comic books or manga. So I used to do that a lot, and I used to watch movies. So that was kind of my escape. And I really loved like foreign films. So I would watch a lot of like Korean action films and action films out of China. Like, I'm not going to say I was the first one because I'm pretty sure there were others before me. But I mean, before John Woo became mainstream, like he had a string of really, like he had Hard Boiled. I mean, there's a lot of action movies now that take from John Woo films.
Oh yeah.
But like Hard Boiled, A Better Tomorrow, The Killer. I mean, those are like great movies, and just being able to watch them, and then also kind of see him come into the United States and do movies like Hard Target and Face Off. Broken Arrow and Wind Talkers. I mean, those are like awesome. I mean, Wind Talkers is probably like the worst out of them all.
No, fantastic action movies right there.
I know some good stuff. Like Face Off if Face Off is on, I'll still watch Face Off.
It's so
Broken
crazy.
Arrow,
that's what we call a remote stopper. Like when you're flicking through channels and you go, oh, Face Off. Yeah, let's stop there.
Face Off.
It's the craziest movie.
Oh, I love that movie, and like all of the effects and all of the camera movements that is attributed to John Woo. I think that's one of his movies where he just let it fly, because he had earned the cachet to like do that. So he was able to do the slow mo, the doves, the music, the super high spark squibs when they're shooting and all the stuff going off, and then the kind of like Shakespearean, role reversal, family reversal, and how each one thinks they're right, but each one would have been good at their other job. Like John Travolta would have been great as a villain, which he was in the beginning, or just towards the end, and Nicolas Cage would have been great as the police role. I mean, so it was just a wonderful movie for me to watch that as I think I was like 15 or 16. So I was like, oh man, this is how you do an action film. So like I used to watch a lot, and I still do now. I still watch a lot of like foreign action films that are just, I think they push the boundaries a little more in terms of what you can do, and it makes it fresh and exciting.
Yeah, Chris Cox, you're talking about things, you touched upon things in that story where you're talking about before the internet and after the internet, where you can find your tribe. You had to hop on a bus and go to different towns to find people that had anime, that had manga, that had the movies that you wanted to see. Now, the kids, and here I am, I just got older. The kids can just sit in front of their screen, whichever screen it is, and press a couple of buttons, and you got it. You found your tribe. You could find a whole group that's dedicated to that tribe. You could find a podcast, a story, all your stories. You can go to many different channels and find the stuff that you like in just a simple click of the button. Now, previous to internet, you couldn't do that. You even had your cousin right in your own family that you were scared to talk about it because you didn't know if that was a good thing. I want to encourage people, if you like it, somebody else is going to like it. Your idea could be crazy, or it could be crazy in your own head, but somebody else is going to like it. We're all human. My goodness. You're going to find your tribe. And Chris Cox, you found your tribe. Tell me more.
I did, man. And it's so fleet, like that little, that little bubble of things you like. It's so fragile. And you don't want to share it with people because you don't want it to break. And I think I went through a lot of my life like that, like with my writing. Like I love to write, and I always kind of wanted to write my own story or write a movie or things, write a script. And I've always kind of wanted to, and I've always dabbled in a little bit. Like I kind of wrote a play before when I was in high school. And again, those are things that you keep to yourself. Like I was in like a community acting theater when I was in high school, but like I kept that to myself. Like no one knew about that. And it was that was Brooklyn. It was BCAT, which is Brooklyn Community Access Theater, and then it was Bronx Community Access Theater, and it was in Little Italy, 183rd Street. And I
love how New York is in streets, man. It's all sectioned off. Even there's 5 boroughs, and those are all sectioned off. So I don't know if you can call it gang oriented, but you don't cross that part of the town because you're not from there.
Well, it depends. in certain areas, that's it. But I mean, for the most part, I think it's simple. Like when I come out here, and it's like, where do you live at? Oh, well, I live on West 741st Road. Wait, what?
What?
Where is that at?
Bob's Road.
They have all the fire signs, and then depending on how old the person is you're talking to, they'll call the road a different name. Oh, when you take that old Sioux Trail Road. Wait, what road is that? 472. Oh, okay. So it'd be much easier if you just say, just go down, take 11th Avenue, and then get down to 121st Street, and then make a right. That's it. That would be nice.
That was so much easier. And there's a lot of cities. Hey, I'm not going to knock it. There's a lot of cities here in the South and out in the West that are set up on a grid, and I'm very proud of the city managers for doing that. But there's some very rural areas that it is Bob's Road, man. It's somebody's driveway that I think it's over 1,000 feet in some places. They have to name it as the road, and it's hard to get around sometimes. But this is a young Chris Cox in New York City, jumping on buses, and how's the subway system there, man? Is it fun? I've never been north of the Mason-Dixon. I haven't been north to New York.
Okay, I thought it was fun. I love taking the train. The train, it's like in transportation for me. It's like trains were to me most accepted. Trains if you were to go like borough to borough. Like if I was going to go from the Bronx to Manhattan, I'm going to take a train first. And then if I'm interborough, I'm going to travel through the Bronx. I'm going to take either a bus. I could take a bus, a train, a cab, or I could walk, depending on where I wanted to go. And so that's kind of how you do it. Like if it's somewhere within the Bronx, you could just hop on the bus, or you can walk. If it's somewhere a little further in the Bronx, you might want to take a train. But if you're going from the Bronx to Brooklyn, you definitely don't want to take a train. And then Manhattan kind of messes the whole thing up because then they have express buses. So you can take an express bus and you can go to like Staten Island.
In the big city, growing up in the 80s and maybe early 90s, Chris Cox, how safe was it for a young Chris Cox, and how young were you traveling on your own, going off to different places?
I mean, what's crazy about it is I was talking to my wife about that. My daughter, my oldest child, is 8, and I don't know if I let her walk from school and even though Nebraska is pretty safe, but just walking from her school to like home, I'm like, yeah, that's too far for you right now.
Wow.
But me at 8 years old, because it's like in Nebraska, it's not really a whole lot of streets. So, you know, there's like sidewalks, but there's like not a lot. So you're always crossing through street traffic. And I know it's like the dad in me, and I'm like, yeah, you're not walking home alone. But me, as an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old in New York City back in the early 90s, I was taking trains from one part of the Bronx to another, or buses, and I was traveling and going to my grandmother's house by myself. So at like 8 years old, 9 years old, I was getting on a bus or walking to the train station and taking like an hour train ride, getting off, and then walking like another 15 or 20 minutes, and then going to my grandmother's house, like by myself.
Yeah,
like
same. I'm growing up in the 70s in Miami and riding my bike, sometimes with my friends, sometimes not, but ride my bike over to the movie theater and watch kung fu movies all day long. You know, you pay your ticket and you could just sit there in the theater as long as you want. You know, have your bike outside, locked or unlocked. I don't even think I had a bike lock when I was a kid. And you just left it sitting there out by the box. Yeah. And away you go. But then my 14-year-old daughter, we barely let her outside. What? How?
It's crazy.
Why?
Like, because times change, man. It's so great, and it's weird because like I love living in Nebraska. Like I love it that there's so many things that my kids don't have to worry about. Right, but then the side of me that had to worry about it is like, oh man, you are not prepared. Like it's trying to figure out how to like prepare you for life, but also keep things happy.
Yeah, we're going off on that tangent. Are we overprotecting our kids? Is that what's happening?
It's such a fine line of overprotecting, but understanding like things is crazy. Like even though everyone has like this fond, nostalgic memory of being able to travel and do things on your own, kids were still getting kidnapped. You know, kids were still getting, hurt. And I think we over nostalgia and go, oh man, I remember when I used to be able to walk and do this on my own. But at the same time, there were kids that were still, getting in trouble, and there were no Amber Alerts or there were no things like that. So, I mean, we can see the good, but we have to understand that there was bad in it. So, like, even though I traveled New York City, and like I said, I had a thicker skin because you grew up in New York City, so to speak. Like, you get a thicker skin. You have to be able to talk, do things, or say things, and be able to carry yourself a certain way so things don't happen. And it's just a necessity of, like my parents worked and they had to go to work. So like, they can't drive me somewhere. So you have to learn how to be self-sufficient. But at the same time, something bad could have still happened back then. It wasn't like that stuff didn't exist. It could have still happened. I'm very glad it didn't. But it's like now I feel like with all these alerts and, all the human trafficking, I know we're going off like a really kind of like dark hole here.
No, you're touching upon it, Chris Cox. You're touching upon it. It's the information that we have. Yeah, all this stuff was happening back then. I don't even think I had seatbelts when I was a kid. How did I survive? I don't know. But now we have all this information, and we're living in the safest times ever. Generally speaking, the whole world is pretty safe. But we see all this information come through our Twitter feed where, this guy, this city had a problem, and we see it and we go, what if I have that problem? Maybe I shouldn't let my kid out. What do you think?
But the thing is, the information is good because, like, touch on it in terms of like pedophiles, right? No one really knew. It was just like guys down the streets, kind of weird, right? But now, you're so much more aware that people like that infiltrate every levels of like schools, businesses, things like that. And so it's good to have that information. It does make you overly sometimes cautious at the same time. And I worked in social work for like 3 years. And so it's definitely needed the information and the caution is definitely needed, because there's so much that goes around that doesn't even get reported. You know, in certain economic levels, like these bad things that we're talking about, that doesn't even get reported, because they're like, first of all, we're not in a situation that the infrastructure, the first responder infrastructure, isn't set up to serve us. So these things go unreported. You know, like a lot of African American and Latina girls go missing because of this, because they live in underserved areas or economically poor areas, and there's no one that can really say anything or help anything. So these numbers get misreported until someone does support, and you find out that thousands of girls are gone missing. So, I mean, it's safer, and it's good that we live in an area that's safer, but at the same time, I think it, like you said before, I think it does kind of handcuff us a little bit, because we don't let our kids experience certain things. And, you know, I think my wife and I are trying to, in smaller and smaller doses. You know, we're not going to say, yeah, sure, go walk over there. No, you know, like my parents did. And again, it was out of necessity. Both my parents worked. They worked in opposite boroughs, and they weren't going to be home. And so if I wanted to go somewhere, I had to be so specific to say, okay, I got to go somewhere. And then, you know, the best way back then, they didn't have cell phones, so I couldn't say, text my mom and say, hey, Mom, I'm going over here. Left a note. He said, hey, I'm going to Manuel's house. This is his home phone number. This is his address. I left at 3:00. And that's kind of how we were safe with each other. Shout out to my friend Manuel. If you ever listen to the podcast, I'll let him know I put his name in there. It was one of my childhood friends. And it was like, you know, and that's how he said to do it. Mom was like, where you going? I'm like, well, I want to go to Manuel's house. Well, you got his phone number, and I leave the number on a piece of paper, leave his address on a piece of paper, his mom's name, and then I would say, Mom, I left at 3:00. And then when she got home, and it was like 6:30, you better believe there's a phone call. Is Chris still there? Yeah, he's still here. Okay, he needs to be home by 8.
Yeah,
and that's how we checked on each other. And I think now, in the world why it is, even though we have all this information, is we did check on each other, but now we don't take the time to check on each other anymore. So that's why we're so enclosed. Because, she's got her cell phone. I can just track her cell phone, but we don't have any type of contact anymore. So these bad things still happen, even though we have all this technology to keep us connected. So, I don't know. It's a whole lot. I can talk about that.
Oh yeah, we're trying to keep our kids safe. I get it. You know, and with all this information, it might have happened when we were kids, but we just did not know about it. You know, our heads were in the sand. We had the news at 6 and 11. That's it. That's it, man.
That's all you had. Yeah.
Now they got to fill these 24-hour news cycles with something. Are your kids safe? Well, don't let them go outside.
Yeah. That's why news is like somebody said something on Twitter, and that's like news. You know, like Kim Kardashian is news, and it's, you know.
So I wonder if in New York City, in the big cities, Chris Cox, are there still young lads like little Chris Cox going around on their own, taking a bus at 10 years old, 15 years old, even. I guess 15, maybe you might be getting bigger and into your own, but certainly at 8, 9, 10, man. Oh yeah, they got to travel around by themselves.
Because it's not. I mean, they have school buses. Everybody had a school bus, but it's not like where you see on TV where the school buses come to a designated stop or they pick you up in front of your house. Like that doesn't happen in New York City. So like you have to find a way to get to your school. So if you're lucky and your parents own a car, you know, they can drive you and drop you off at school. But for the most part, you either walk into the school that's closest to you in your neighborhood. You're taking a bus with your parents if you leave early enough and they say, okay, I'm going to ride the bus with you, drop you off at school, and then I'm heading to work. Or if your parents work different shifts, then they can do that. But for the most part, you're going to school on your own because both parents have to work, or one parent is like dead asleep because they just came home from work. So you got to find your way to school. So you're taught through repetition. Okay, you take this bus. This is how you get a transfer. This is what stop you get off. This is what you tell the bus driver. Or this is what you listen for on the train. Or this is the street that you turn down. So by repetition and learning your neighborhood, you learn where to go. And so you just have to go to school. So I'm still, I haven't been in New York City in a while. I'm still pretty sure there's kids that are 8, 9 years old, and they're walking to school on their own, taking a bus on their own, taking a train by themselves. Like, that's how I like, very rarely I ever get dropped off at school. I think one time when I was like high school age, I got dropped off at school. And that's because my aunt, like I was visiting my aunt, and she drove me from Queens to the Bronx and it got me to school on time. So I did leave like extra early.
Yeah, so out of necessity. All right. It sounds like, I don't know geography, but that sounds like it's a far distance.
It is. It's a good drive. Well, with my aunt, when she used to drive, God rest her soul, she used to drive like 95 miles an hour everywhere. So it was a quick drive with her.
But did you die?
Yes, but with normal people sort of following the rules of traffic and the speed laws, it could take a little bit. But yeah, there's still kids doing that. And like I said, when you grow up in a city like that, and you know that growing up in Miami, you have a little bit of a thicker skin. Like there are things that you can deal with because you've seen them on a regular basis. Like when you're 10 years old and you're taking a train and there's a crazy person, but someone that maybe has mental health issues on the train, that's not really phasing you too much because you've seen that like a lot of your 10 years of life because you've ridden these trains. So you've seen people act like that. So that's like, yeah, I'm going to go take a nap.
Yeah, you steer clear. Steer away from that.
When people are arguing on the train or you see a fight happen or whatever it may be, you've seen that. So it's not like this shocking thing that you get scared from. You're like, oh, okay, let me just keep my eyes down, not making eye contact with that today because I don't want to deal with that. And then you move on. So it's something that doesn't like raise your heartbeat. Whereas if there's somebody from Nebraska who comes to visit New York and they're on a train and they see somebody that's like should be in Bellevue, which is like one of the mental health hospitals, and they're like roaming the train, like talking and cursing people out, but just because that's their mental health fitness, like that would freak somebody out. That would be like, oh my God, what is happening here? Whereas all the rest of the people who live in New York are like, oh, that's just Mike.
Yeah.
It's just Tuesday.
There's 7 million people living in one place, so obviously you're going to find different kinds of people.
Yeah, that's just today. That's just Tuesday, or just like to give you a scenario of being on a train, say summertime. Being on a train in summertime in New York City is like this. It's packed. Because you got people going and coming from work. Everyone's trying to find the air-conditioned car. So before they updated the trains, when they just had like the old red like 2 trains, like not every car would have air conditioning. So you knew the trains that had air conditioning by how packed they were. You're like, oh man, this train's packed because it was one of the cars that had full air conditioning. So you try to walk through the trains, what they told you not to do, but you still did anyway. Especially when you're younger, you want to feel cool because you can walk through the different cars while it was moving. You'd find a car that wasn't too packed. It was hot. It was stuffy. You could have people eating. You could hear a group of people conversing in like Chinese or Mandarin. You could hear another group of people speaking like Jamaican patois. You could hear Russian. You could hear Spanish, like all in the same car. Like these all are languages that are being spoken in the same car while you're there.
Yeah.
Then you could have someone walking in asking for money to a homeless person, either dancing or doing something or trying to make people laugh or just saying, hey, I need money to eat something. Then you'd have like an Asian woman who would be on a train with like a backpack and a front pack, and she would have gum and batteries, and would be selling batteries for $1. And let me tell you, no, don't laugh.
No.
Those batteries were the best batteries in the world. Ask anybody tell you, they last better than Duracell, last better than Energizer. When you needed batteries for your CD player or Walkman, you would pray for this lady to get on the train and sell batteries for $1. But she'd have batteries for $1. She'd have Snickers for like 50 cents, all in the same like front like box compartment strapped to her chest. And then and like an Asian male would get on, like usually her husband, and he'd be selling toys. So he'd start the toys up and let them run on the train. So kids would be like, "Mommy, I want that toy." That is all one cart within like a 15-minute section of each other. Like that is riding. At least when I was younger, that was what it was to ride a New York City train.
That is excellent, man. I've seen that a little bit in the movies, and you just brought it to me at, not firsthand, but secondhand to me, but firsthand from you, straight from Chris Cox, man. That is fantastic. And
those batteries are real.
Yeah, they created a need for it, and they said, "Hey, I didn't. You were on the train. You didn't even know you needed batteries, but this lady came on and." You know what? I do need batteries, and I do need a toy. And they last. Okay. And hey, they're good batteries. Okay. This portion of the podcast brought to you by that lady's batteries.
Yes. I don't know what it was about those batteries, but they lasted. I'm telling you, you can ask anybody. You buy a pack and you get 2 AA batteries for $1, right? And those things lasted. I don't know what it was. But they lacked because when they went out, you're like, "Oh, please let this lady be on the train. I can finish my train ride with music."
Now she's creating a demand. She's creating a need. You're seeking her out.
Yeah, and then she get on batteries. You be like, "Yes, I'm right here. Let me get 2. Let me get 2. I got $2. Matter of fact, let me get some Snickers too. You get batteries and Snickers, and you're good to go."
Excellent, man. Excellent. It becomes a show, and I've seen this on movies, but I didn't know how real that was. It is real.
Oh, it is.
You get on the train, and somebody's going to tell you jokes. Yeah, somebody's going to work out their material. Whatever it may be. That's fantastic, man. It's a show, and that's big city life.
City.
I had that in Miami too, for sure. But then you go, well, I mean, we have Little Rock, Arkansas. That's the biggest city in Arkansas, and they do have that kind of life where the creatives will go into the city, and you'll see a guitarist over here and a guy over there playing flute, and a guy over there juggling, and there is that. I guess you have a bigger city in Nebraska that you can go to and find these things.
Yeah, Omaha,
Nebraska.
Omaha, Nebraska, or Lincoln, Nebraska. That's going to be like your main hubs where you would see more of like the arts on display, more people in general, like walking in the streets or being around. Like those are your 2. After that, everything else is pretty much rural.
Okay, so we're going through the life of Chris Cox a little bit in New York City and finding out how he came to be and he became a tough kid or a stronger kid, somewhat because of football, and football is what took you out to the Midwest and you met your lovely bride out there, and hey, fantastic. Yes. that's a beautiful thing. Now you said she was not from Nebraska either. She was also a transplant, but her family is all in Nebraska.
Yeah, they all live in there. So my wife is originally from Guatemala, and then they moved from Guatemala to L.A. They were in California until she was like 10, and then they all moved to Nebraska, and they've been in Nebraska since. But so it's always funny is because I tell people when people listen to my story when I talk about my wife, because when you tell somebody from Nebraska, when they know you're not from Nebraska, and you say you're from New York, the next question is, well, how'd you end up here?
Exactly.
So after I tell that story, they go, "Oh my God, your wife is from the West Coast and you're from the East Coast." And I'm like, "Yep." And we met in the middle. We met right in the Midwest, right in the middle. And it's been a wonderful, 12-year ride. Well, 13 if you count before we're married. So a wonderful 13 years. And it's just awesome. It's just a good time. So,
excellent.
So has brought me to the Midwest. That's what's kept me in the Midwest. And also with my wife's urging of talking to someone else other than her. That's what urged me to start my podcast, because at the very least, I can talk in my basement, record myself, and then put it out there. And if someone listens, they listen, but at least I got what I needed to say off my chest.
That is correct. And I noticed that you've rearranged your podcast studio. At least that's what one of the last things you had on there. And you did mention that it is your basement. You found a spot, a place, a man cave. And this is what you're choosing to do in your man cave.
Yes.
So you have a place to talk to people, to chat to people. People don't have conversations, I feel, too much anymore. And that's what podcasts are allowing people to do. And the reason that I find that podcasts are so popular is that you're listening in to somebody's conversation. You know, you're finding out information about them, and it's giving you time to pass throughout the day, whatever you're doing. You're driving, you're working out, or whatever. But you're listening to a conversation of two people, and maybe you like that conversation, and then you keep listening, and maybe you don't like that conversation, and you find another one. So I find that there's podcasts for everybody, and the reason I started this one is I wanted to have real conversations. I don't want to be looking at my phone all the time. And what did you start your multiple podcast disorder I mean, you were driving the wife crazy. That's part of it. That
was number one.
Talking to her about certain pop culture things and mangas and animes. I mean, what was the straw that made you buy the microphone and the computer, or made you start the podcast? The straw that broke the camel's back.
In a good way, it really was, like, even though I joke about it, it really was the support of my wife, because I always have all that pop culture trivia things, like if I watch a movie, that guy was in this movie with this lady, blah, blah, blah. That was his first movie. I always like to connect the dots or talk about things. And like, in a good way, my wife's like, you should start a podcast. Like, podcasting is big, because we had talked about, podcasts and things like that. And I don't know how I found it or if she found it, but I found Anchor. And it was a free podcasting, podcast host site. I looked into it and I researched. I didn't have any equipment, or did I? I did. So it's funny. Like, I started and stopped my podcast. So I brought this podcast in a box equipment set up, and it's off Amazon. And it came with a mixer. So it came with a one mic mixer with a microphone and all the, cords, pop screen, everything, to hook it up to your computer. And then, so I brought it and was like, I'm going to do this thing. And I got super discouraged because the laptop I had at the time was a Google Chrome. And so if anybody out there ever has a Google Chrome, they're really good, like affordable laptops. But to do anything like this on it doesn't work, because it doesn't really, it doesn't vibe well with like USB, like audio equipment. So it wouldn't like pick up my mic. It wouldn't do anything. So I was like freaking out. I was like, I just spent $100 and I can't use any of this stuff. So I was kind of dejected. And then I found Anchor, and I was like, well, Anchor lets you do it from your phone. So if anybody knows Anchor, like, I feel like I'm an Anchor OG.
I think I don't have to do my Anchor spot. Let's do it now.
Yeah, so like, I was an Anchor OG where you used to only be able to record for 5 minutes at a time. So people don't know that. Like, Anchor, now you can record like a 2-hour episode and it's all good. Or you can upload a 2-hour episode, it's all good. But when I first found Anchor, which was like probably 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, you could only record in 5-minute increments. And if you wanted to have a show, you'd have to record, say if you wanted to have a 30-minute show, you'd have to record 6 5-minute increments and then push them all together. And then it would basically create a podcast episode for you. Like, that's how Anchor used to be. So I recorded my first episode from my phone, sitting in my car on my lunch break at work. I just put my headphones in, and recorded it on my iPhone. And then I was like, man, this is cool. Like,
Is that still out there?
It is. That's my very first podcast episode. If you go all the way down to the bottom, it says episode 0. And I think it's called Angry at Success.
All right. I have them all loaded up. I've been listening to the last few, but I need to go back and just listen to all of them.
That's the very first one. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, and it's the very first one. It's like 5 minutes exactly or something like that. It's called episode 0. It's Angry at Success. And that was the first episode I did, and I just did it on my phone, and I felt so empowered. I was like, wow, I can do this. Like, I got over the fear of because I recorded it and I published it, and I was like, man, this is cool. Like, I showed my wife. I was like, honey, look, I did this. This is up there. Like, people can listen to this. And I started kind of getting listens. And I was like, oh, man, somebody listened to this? Like, holy snap. Like, somebody listened to this other than me and other than my wife.
Yeah.
And so it kind of reinvigorated me. So then I started to do more and more research. And I threw myself into it. I was like, okay, how do I do this? I have this equipment. How do I do this? And then so I was, where I work, I was able to get afforded a MacBook. So I took it home one day and I was like, I wonder if this works, with GarageBand and everything. So I hooked everything up and it worked, and it recognized the mic. GarageBand recorded it. I was like, we are in business. So it's like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I think the next weekend or weekend after that, laptop home, went in the basement, got my mic set up, and I recorded a podcast. And that's the actual episode 1 on my podcast. Excellent. So it's episode 0 was on my phone, and episode 1 was me actually using my microphone and using my mixer and plugging it into my laptop and recording it on GarageBand. I think I recorded like a 45-minute episode or something. I talked about sports. I think I talked about sports, movies, and I think I got some anime in there. Oh, I did. It's about sports, anime, and movies, because at that time I was trying to fit 3 topics or 1 topic of each into my podcast. And I felt so good. Like, I got it out there. I made some cover art. Like, I promoted it, on Facebook and everything. And I was like, this is cool, since I can do this for free pretty much. Other than paying for equipment, I can do it for free. And then as my love and excitement has grown for it and my studying, I've constantly what equipment can I use? What can I do? How do I use this? How do I connect this? How do I add this? What's going to make this sound better? Or what are the analytics saying? Like, if you do a video, you can get away with bad video, but you need great audio. It's the same thing with a podcast. Like, your content may not be the greatest, but if you have really good audio, people will listen to you. Or how do you make it exciting? So I just kept studying all that, YouTube is my friend. Amazon is my angry devil. Because Amazon, for podcasters, Amazon is the serious drug.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm eBay. I mean, and a lot of the eBay stuff goes through Amazon, but I always buy new stuff from them. But everything I own is pretty much eBay, which is another. Yeah. Which brings us back to the beginning on why stores are closing.
Yes. It's like Rick James on Dave Chappelle show. Like he said, cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
Amazon is a hell of a drug.
For sure.
Because you're like, oh, man, I can get this. I can get that for like $21. Boop. Yes, please.
Yeah.
So
be here tomorrow.
Yes. So over time, I have upgraded. I went from the one mic mixer. I now have a 2 mic mixer, which is great. So when I actually do have guests inside of my home, I can set it up and have 2 mics. I have different equipment. I have my studio that I'm kind of rearranging. I feel like I rearrange all the time. But I share it with my wife because she has her work office kind of on the other side of my studio. And it's just awesome, because it's grown out of frustration that, oh man, I can't believe I spent $100 and this stuff doesn't work, I spent a little bit more money, and now I'm like, oh, you can do this, or you can add this, or now I know how to do a mix minus, and I have this, so now I could take live phone calls if I wanted to, like step up and do that, or I can record everything down to my Tascam DR5 recorder and basically record live to air. So now when I do it, I can, my guests they can hear my intro music, they can hear my interview, they can hear everything that I'm doing on my end, and we can have a wonderful conversation, using a software like Zoom, which is free. I mean, so it's really awesome to sit back and how I've grown, and I love it. And I do it not to necessarily make money. I do it because I like talking. I like to talk. I like to listen to people. And this is what's truly fun for me. And so, like I said, I enjoy it a ton. And that's kind of how I got onto the road of multiple podcast disorder. And I didn't want to be put into a box of, well, you should talk about sports, or you should just talk about anime, or you should just talk about movies, or you should just maybe talk about politics, whatever. I'm going to talk about anything I want to talk about. So,
yeah, all the different avenues, all the different facets of Chris Cox. Started at a young age where you had different likes, different interests, just like most people have different likes and different interests. Don't paint any one person into a box, whatever even that means. What is this box? We're not boxes. We're people, and we interact with other people. And eventually you're going to go, oh, I like that thing. Let me go do that thing. Yeah. Let me go check that thing out. So, and you're doing exactly what you love. I'm looking at a picture of you, and you're in your podcast studio, and you have your pictures of My Hero Academia and Stranger Things behind you, and you're on the air, and there's a few more pictures that I don't even recognize. You have some pop figures as well behind you, and you've got it set up, man, and you've got the ability to chat with people. How do you find the people that you find interesting? I mean, I go to Instagram, and that's how I found you. I find people that are interesting, and you seemed very interesting, Chris Cox. How do you find the people that you talk to?
Honestly, I joined a lot of groups on Facebook. Like once I started, like I said, when I researched the podcast, I joined a lot of groups, like the Anchor group. I joined there's a Tascam group for people who have it's called podcast, but really it's like a Tascam group. So if you have any type of Tascam equipment, you can be in there.
Oh, I have a Zoom.
Another one is
I have a Zoom for H4n Pro, which is what I'm recording you on right now.
See, there you go. Brought to you by Zoom.
Well, I can't go into the Tascam group because I don't have one. I have to be sectioned off.
True. I would, you can just pivot a little bit. I have a Tascam, and you recorded me. Ipso facto, you have a Tascam, so there you go. Join the group.
Yeah, I think I've had Tascams over the years. I've been in radio since '86, so yes, I think I've had a Tascam in my hands recording somebody at some time.
So you're good to go. So you're in the group. Your grandfather.
Yay! I'm in. Thank you, Chris Cox. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm like Podcast Lounge, like things like that. So I just kind of joined some of those groups and met people through that. Like I think other than my cousin who's been on my show quite a bit, one of the people that's been on my show a lot was a guy I met through the Anchor Facebook group, and his name is Wes, and he has a podcast called I Got Next, and we just kind of vibed about talking about sports. Like I'd say, hey, you want to come on my show, man? We're going to talk about some sports and sports and anime. And we started getting into Spider-Man, and we were talking about the different universes of Spider-Man. And a cool fact is Stan Lee went to so I went to DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx, and Stan Lee went to my high school.
Excellent.
So Stan Lee went to DeWitt Clinton. Like a lot of people, like Ralph Lauren, the creator of Polo, he went to my high school as well. Like there's a lot of famous people. Tracy Morgan went to my high school as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of famous Yeah, so it's like a lot of famous
That's my
people
Tracy
went to
Morgan.
my
Thank
school.
you.
Tracy Morgan, yeah. It's like, I like Tracy Morgan. He's funny. And so we kind of talked about that, and we vibed about that. And like podcast-wise, our mentality was the same. And so he's been on my show quite a few times, like talking about basketball. We talked about football. We've talked about, one of my favorite things is him and I did a show, and all we did was talk about Voltron, the new animated series that's on Netflix, and just talked about how awesome that was. Like, that was one of my favorite. It was like an hour and 40 minutes. And we just compressed 80 episodes of Voltron.
Yeah.
And it was probably longer than it should have been, but you know what? Him and I were just having a lot of fun. And like through that's how I've met some of my guests. And I've had my cousin on because he hit me up, was like, "Hey man, I'm starting a podcast too." I was like, "Well, you need to get on."
Yeah.
And then one of my very first guests was actually one of my good friends that I played football with, because he was in the process of writing like an ebook and being like really fulfilling like his goal of wanting to be like a life coach. And so we got on and we started talking about that. And I think that was like episode 2 for me. And that was one of my like highest rated episodes. And we just talked about life, school, how we've handled things, setbacks, positive things in our life. And then he was talking about some of his wisdom that he's learned. But it's from people that I know or people that I meet digitally, through either, like I said, Instagram, Facebook, or any of these podcasting groups. And some of the nicest people, and like you talked about, having great conversation, Dan, and they have some really cool ideas, and it turns out some really great conversations. Because like we're all trying to connect and be heard. And then once you find someone that has the same type of wavelength, even the ones that don't, you get a really cool friendship or a really cool conversation out of it. And to me, that also is what I'm in it for in terms of podcasting. So that's how I get my guests, is through my Facebook groups, or you're the first person I met like through Instagram to do podcasts with, but mostly to the Facebook groups.
Excellent, man. Chris Cox, the Multiple Podcast Disorder. And I know I'm resetting it. This is years of radio training, is reset the episode. I should have said that many more times throughout. But I've said your name enough times that I hope my listeners have it drilled into your head. Chris Cox, everybody. Look him up. Multiple Podcast Disorder. Man, I never put time limits on this thing. But I think we are drawing to a close on this fine Saturday afternoon. We started at 11 a.m. and it just crossed over. Are you Central Time in Nebraska?
Yeah, I'm Central Time, so it's 11 a.m. So it's about a good hour and some odd minutes.
Well, all right. Excellent. I mean, hey, there shouldn't be a time limit on a conversation, especially a good conversation like this one. And I knew it was going to be good because, hey, you're a guy that likes to chat about things, and you've had a life story. And we just barely touched on Chris Cox's life story. We mostly spent our time in New York. And then we crossed over. I mean, just go into Sheboygan. I just wanted to say Sheboygan a few more times. Sheboygan. I just like saying that name.
Yeah, Sheboygan.
It seems like a fun town just for the name alone. But I mean, any other avenues that you want to explore? I mean, what do you do? What do you do for cash? Because I know podcasting doesn't pay the bills at first. And anybody that's out there that's listening that wants to start a podcast, don't expect you're going to get rich. I mean, unless you're a famous comedian or a movie star. I've been listening to Mike Tyson's Hot Boxing for the past week or so, and it's just amazing. And I know he's probably making money right off. But for somebody you or I that are maybe not quote unquote famous, even though you're on the What Makes You Famous podcast,
hopefully I'll be famous now because I'm on your show.
Hey, just a little bit more famous than you were. My radio station that I run online is Radio What, and it's What Makes You Famous. How about that?
Awesome.
Anything else you want to tell the people?
You know what? I think I have a YouTube, slowly burgeoning YouTube channel. Let's just say it's Multiple Podcast Disorder. So you can check me out on YouTube at that. And I've got 2 videos up. Oh, yeah, two.
Yay.
One was kind of one was a trial one, and I've got one that I did better where I experimented with some do-it-yourself DIY lighting, and I feel like I got pretty good at lighting and got the background set up. I was talking about some the zombie genre and whether or not it's dead or is it being revitalized by foreign cinema. So I talked about that, and I'm going to plan to add more YouTube videos just talking about different avenues that I like to, just another way to get myself out there.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you can always do the podcast with video and put them out there simultaneously. I'll put this up on YouTube, and I'll go ahead and subscribe to your Multiple Podcast Disorder YouTube.
Yeah. Appreciate the subs. I think you'll be like number 9.
Hey.
You'll be subscriber number 9, maybe 10. So I appreciate that. And like for money, for my actual job, I am a program director at a YMCA. So I run and I coach football. So I coach 8th grade football, and I also am the program director at the Y. So all of the sports for youth and adults, as well as any programming, be it educational or fitness-wise, I am in charge of creating and facilitating that. So,
and that is just great, man. You learned how to play the football, and now you're teaching the football. That's what we should be doing, man. Whatever you learn, spread it around. Tell people.
Hey,
don't keep it to yourself.
Teaching also helps you learn better, too.
I is a good teacher.
Yes.
No, teachers are great, man, and that's fantastic, man. So the YMCA is your primary day job?
Yes, sir.
That's fantastic, man. What's the Tower Academy? Oh, that's something that you did before.
Yeah, I worked at Tower. I was a resource teacher. So all of the knowledge that I learned about being a tough kid and all of the hard knocks that I learned, I was able to translate that into working with basically at-risk kids. And I hate to say at-risk kids, but kids that were on their last chance in terms of schooling in the district. So they got kicked out of any of the other schools in that district, and they were sent to Tower. This is kind of like their last stop other than either going to jail. And some kids were in jail and got released to come to school during the day and had to go back and serve the rest of their time. And while others, this was the school that was best for them, because putting them in a high population school would just have them slip through the cracks. So I did that. That was in Sheboygan. And I also coached football in Sheboygan too, at Sheboygan North High School. And then before that, I was a wraparound care worker, so basically a social worker. And I worked with families and parents in the legal system who are juveniles and helping them to stay out of the legal system as adults. Basically, they were on orders. Basically, they were on orders to be taken away to a juvenile detention center or a juvenile prison center, but they were on a stayed order with me to work with me and my the program that I was affiliated to help them stay out of jail. So I kind of worked with kids a lot throughout my life.
Chris Cox, fine, upstanding member of the community, man, helping the kids. The children are our future. You don't try, you succeed, man. You're doing good. No, that's great. If you could help one kid, then, well, I DJ on the weekends, and I played a song last night that I knew just one person in this room full of 100 would have liked. And I said, if I can just entertain one person, then I guess I'm not very good. So, but yeah, you're helping a multiple amount of people, man. You're helping a multiple amount of people, and that's fantastic, man. You've taken the knowledge that you've learned. Now, when you went to college at the Mustangs, is that the area of study you had, was teaching?
No, I went, I took the long way around. I went for mass communications because I wanted to be on the radio. I wanted to be on TV. So I wanted to initially stay involved in football as long as I possibly could, because I didn't know if I was going to play after college. So I wanted to be like a sports broadcaster. So in Morningside, that was my major, is mass communication. So I learned early editing on like Final Cut Pro, like way back. So I learned early editing on that. I learned I worked at the radio station at night. So I was a radio station host. I did the nights weekends, so Friday through Sunday. I did the weekends late night, so I kind of got to play a little bit more of what I wanted versus what the normal studio ration music that you have to play. Like, I'm going to play this amount of pop, or because your hip hop, time, this is what's kind of allotted for you. Because I worked weekends and late nights, I had a little bit more leeway. So I pretty much would go there early Friday, basically dig through the crates and find stuff I liked, and I would play it. And
you're giving people a little taste of radio. If you work for a big company, you have less leeway. I've worked for major corporations, and I've also worked for mom and pops. The mom and pops have a lot more leeway, where it's just one station, one owner, and as long as you get along with that owner, you can do pretty much. You have more leeway. Not pretty much whatever you want. Still got to stay with the format.
But yes, you have to stay within the format. But I had a little bit of leeway to play music that I liked, and I can converse with the community, so with the listeners. So I did a lot of call-in stuff, and I'd play a lot of songs, and I wouldn't do a true introduction. I'd be like, all right, well, if you guys can name that tune, call in the next blah blah blah, however many minutes or seconds or whatever. And have people come in and name, we talk about that, and this is their favorite song, or they didn't like this song, but they don't ever hear it on the radio, so thanks for playing it. So I really enjoyed doing that, especially when I was in college, and just having fun, just being on the radio at 2 in the morning. Like, I think that's an experience people should have, is being on the radio at 2 in the morning and playing music is pretty fun. And being in a radio station.
And you're talking to the truck drivers, you're talking to the security guards, you're talking to people out there that work nights, the nurses that are working in the middle of the night. So people work at night, man. And that's you'll have a niche crew, amount of listeners, and I'm sure you develop some fan following there.
Well, and it was cool because it was a lot of the students that were late because either they were work study on campus, or they were studying, and so I'd play a lot of music that we liked back then. But also I'd sneak into a lot of stuff that I like, so I'd play a lot of a mix of instrumental, hip hop, jazz, lo-fi hip hop is a big thing now. But there was a couple of bands that kind of had a lo-fi hip hop jazz back then, and they were fairly obscure. So I'd play some of that music on the radio, and just, like I said, things that I liked that I could get away with. And I liked film and video, and I was able to kind of film some projects for one of my film classes. So that's what I went to school for. But because of my experience at life and experiences in college, a lot of people recommended me to work with kids. So one of the very first thing I ever did is I was a youth counselor at a juvenile detention center in Sioux City, Iowa. And so I worked there. And then from there, it went to working in schools. And then from there, went to working at another juvenile facility in Kearney, Nebraska. From there, it went to working as a social worker in Milwaukee. And then from there, went to working at a school in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And then from there, I'm at a YMCA here in Nebraska. So it's kind of, I wanted to be in radio, but people said, you could help kids. And that's kind of been my job that I've been in since then. And then it allows me to coach. So I can't say no to that.
Yeah. And you're taking all the avenues, once again, that you started at a young age, and you're putting them all together. You're doing the podcast. That's got the radio. You're the football. You're teaching the kids how to play football. That's from an early age. And this is where do you see all this culminating? Do you think that sportscasting announcing is something that you still want to do? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, Chris Cox?
Well, in 5 years, I would love to have my own like iPhone videography business, because that's what I'm like dabbling into, trying to create now, as well as a podcast that is earning income. And not to be rich from it, but a podcast that's earning income.
Yeah, make a living.
That's where I would like. Yeah, that's where I would like to be at, and being able to meet people and talk to people and talk at events, or anything, talk on the radio, and basically just share myself with other people. That's where I see myself in 5 years. Definitely doing my videography, and definitely doing my podcast.
I think you're well on your way, Chris Cox, the multiple podcast disorder host. Tell the people how to get a hold of you online and socially, and give them the links firmly.
Yes, I will do that. Well, first and foremost, you can find me at Anchor. That's Anchor FM, or you can find me on iTunes, or you can find me on Spotify, all in the Multiple Podcast Disorder. You can find me on YouTube at Multiple Podcast Disorder, and Facebook at Multiple Podcast Disorder. And if you don't want to feel like jumping around to all those different links, you can just go to my Linktree. So basically, it's Linktree. It's linktr.ee/multiple podcast disorder, and that will give you a link list of everywhere you can find me, of all of my podcast hosting sites, as well as my social media sites. So again, that's my Linktree. So it's linktr.ee/multiple podcast disorder. And that has all my social media and podcast links.
Well, I encourage everybody to go find Mr. Chris Cox and listen to him, man. I mean, you've listened to him for over an hour. He's got the sweetest voice, and yeah, you had aspirations of being on TV. You got a pretty face too. So yeah,
I don't know about that. I probably have a face for radio.
Hey, that's what I always say. Well, I appreciate you chit-chatting with me for a while, and I want to be mindful of your time. You have your lovely family there, probably waiting for you on a Saturday afternoon. What do you got planned for today? To tell
we're gonna make box robots. So
what?
We're gonna we have all those boxes from Christmas, those big boxes. So my wife and I and the kids, we're gonna like cut them all up and just make robots and spaceships for the kids. So that's what we're gonna do this afternoon.
What a fantastic use of boxes, man. That's great. Hey, family time is good, man. Well, I'm going to get to my family as well. Any last words for the people, Chris Cox?
I would just personally like to thank you, Dan. I appreciate you reaching out to me and giving me the space to talk, because I know I can talk a lot. So thank you for giving me the space. Thank you for reaching out to me. And to all the people out there listening, is if you got a little small dream that's fragile, don't be afraid that it's going to break. Get it out there, show it to people, let it be free. Because like Dan and we said earlier, you're going to find somebody else that is going to be on the same dream level as you. So don't be afraid. Go out there, jump in it. If you like a certain type of show, or you like a certain type of a genre, a movie, or anything, or books, go out there and share it with people. If you like to write, sing, whatever it is, go out there and share it, and I guarantee you're going to feel happier for doing it. So, and have a happy New Year's, everybody.
Well, there you have it, party people. I knew it was going to be good. Chris Cox, the Multiple Podcast Disorder. Find him everywhere. He's got a Linktree. These kids and their newfangled stuff. I don't even know what a Linktree is. Okay, I know what a Linktree is. I don't know how to make a Linktree yet. I will figure it out, and maybe I'll make one for myself, man. But look up Chris Cox, the Multiple Podcast Disorder. He's got quite a few episodes out there, and he's got them separated in seasons. I wondered about that, because I think I might be doing it wrong. Maybe there's no wrong or right. Some people hold their podcast for a week and they put them out weekly. I'll put a podcast out like right after I record it. I'll put the intro in and the outro, and just send it on out to the world. Maybe no editing needed, because it's real life. It's a real life conversation. And it looks like that's what Chris Cox does as well. He talks about things that are on his mind, things that he likes. And if he likes it, somebody else is going to like it. And as he was saying towards the end, he's getting listeners, and he's kind of excited about that. So people are listening to the conversations that are being had out there. Yeah, podcast might be the way to go. It's radio on demand is what it is. You can listen to the morning show and the morning drive as you're going to work, as you're going to school, doing your thing, whatever it is, when you're in the car. And radio it's still around, but for the most part, I like to throw in a podcast, whatever I'm feeling that day. Like I said at the end there, I was listening to Mike Tyson's Hot Box. That's the podcast I've been listening to, and of course Rogan and Mark Maron, but the science podcast as well with Wendy Zuckerman, Science Versus, and Neil deGrasse Tyson with his he's got several podcasts, and even Chuck Nice, his co-host, has branched out and gone off and done some other podcasts, the science of sports and such. So they're all out there. If you have an interest, your podcast is out there waiting for you. And if you don't have it out there, I encourage you to make your own. Do what Chris Cox did with his multiple podcast disorder. He says he was driving his honey crazy with all his sports talk and his anime talk, and she didn't want any of it. I get it. I understand. I could come up with a conversation and start talking to somebody, but then you'll start feeling maybe they don't want to listen to this. Maybe they don't want to hear this. Well, I got the podcast. Chris has got the podcast. Whatever's on your mind, you put it out there. That's what we do, man. That's what we do. Thank you so much, Chris Cox, for coming on the program and being a part of What Makes You Famous. And ever forward to your multiple podcast disorder podcast and all the endeavors that you do, man. I see you. You're teaching the kids. You're teaching the kids the football that you learned, and I see you doing things with your podcast and beyond, and doing the things that you want to do, man, and you got your family, and that's sweet. Making robot boxes. That's what. After the podcast was over, he said that he's going to be taking what he's doing with the rest of his day. He's going to be taking the boxes from Christmas and making them into robots for his kids and his wife. And that's, man, family time is good. I'll tell you. It was so good talking to Chris Cox of the Multiple Podcast Disorder. And it's good talking to you as well, my loyal listeners, my people out there. And I encourage you, if you want to tell your story, give me a call, 501-470-6386, or email info@radiowhat.com. That's it for this edition of What Makes You Famous. It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.
Hey, Keys Dan. What you doing?
My line.
I'm playing the best music by request 24 hours a day. Click on the request tab at the top of RadioWhat.com.
RadioWhat.com.
If you like what you hear, follow What Makes You Famous social media. Use the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Follow on Facebook at What Makes You Famous. Follow on Instagram at What Makes You Famous. Follow on Twitter at Makes Famous. And follow on YouTube at Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Famous podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Famous podcast on Podbean, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, and almost anywhere you find podcasts. Tell your story on my podcast, What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time. You can support What Makes You Famous using the PayPal link, paypal.me/KeysDan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Famous podcast is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening. Radio What? The music you want. with some great quotes. Laziness is nothing more than the habit of resting before you get tired. Jules Renard. The music you want. RadioWhat's.com.